Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back. Got my boy Tony, got Luke, and I got Austin. What's up, gents?
Ready to talk some fishing.
Woo! Ready to talk biggest lessons learned. And for those of you watching on the FB, hopefully you can see us. Any confirmation that Facebook can actually see us?
It's got on.
Nice. Love it. So yeah, we want this to be interactive. This is going to be a podcast. So a lot of you will be hearing this after the fact, but we wanted to get on a Zoom call like this. We talked about it on our weekly call. We do a weekly call with our team every Monday and just talk about the content that we're going to be creating for the next couple of weeks. So anytime you see a new YouTube video or a Facebook post or an Instagram post, it is always pre-planned out in advance. Doesn't always work the way we want it to. Sometimes weather gets in the way, etc. But for the most part, it's pretty well planned. We're like, it'd be cool to do a podcast and a live call with our Facebook audience, just talking about biggest lessons learned, because there have been some big ones this year. I would say a little bit different this year, Luke, right? And Tony, not going to ICAST, where you get to see kind of some of the new innovations and you know, new just kind of new products is really what ICAST is about. So that didn't happen this year, but there were some really, really big lessons in terms of what works, what doesn't. A lot of it based on science, some of it based on Luke's $1,000 knot tester. a lot of unique things that came up this year. So who wants to get started? And please, if you're on Facebook, start putting some comments in. We're going to get to those as well.
Yeah, I think one to just I mean, as far as just the craziness of the year, I think fishing has proven to be a good escape from tough situations. I think at the macro level, right, with the coronavirus coming, it was really just a good thing for families to go out and do when travel wasn't allowed, and for some part, you couldn't really even go to a lot of places. And it was very eye-opening seeing the amount of people on the water, like in March and April. Compared to like just before that. So I think just fishing in general has proven to be just a great way to, as we all know, just to kind of be a good way to kind of let off steam, trying to get away from things for a little bit and just relax.
What I'm hearing you say is fishing is COVID resilient.
It's true. Yeah. Helps you grow your hair a lot longer too.
Fishing don't care about no COVID.
Gives you excuse to let your hair grow long and beard grow long. So another bonus.
Austin, Tony, have you guys fished more this year?
Definitely seeing more people on the water for sure.
Yeah,
the weekends.
Definitely. I mean, I don't feel like I've fished more, probably the same amount. But like Austin said, definitely seeing more people out there. And just a big lesson learned from that is you can't always rely on, your usual go-to spots, especially if you turn a corner and somebody's there. You have to be able to really, really just be able to know what the fish are doing, what types of areas they're going to be in, and change your game plan based on that, especially when there's a lot more people on the water than usual.
I wish there was a club that had thousands and tens of thousands of anglers that all shared information like that.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. Salt Strong Insider Club. And if you guys don't know, I think, Austin, this might be your first time on the podcast. I feel like all the insiders know you because you're the most active guy in the insider community. So Austin helps run the entire insider community, where we have post fishing reports, questions, reviews, all kinds of stuff going up. It's a completely private. It's not on Facebook. It's all hosted on a completely private page. And Austin is the guy that runs that. So he is Mr. We call him Johnny on the spot. Anyone's got a question, he is on it. So he's doing that full time. So Austin, welcome. Welcome. This is your first Zoom call with us, right?
Yes, sir. This is the first one.
Oh, exciting. You nervous?
Oh yeah, I'm a little nervous, but it'll be all right.
But you did a couple of tips on the YouTube channel recently, so.
Yep, got out there a little bit.
Redfish.
Came out with a bang, proving that the new bomber works extremely well. And
that was awesome.
In the murky water up there in Jacksonville.
Man, that thing is awesome. That's definitely one of my new go-to lures for sure.
So is that a lesson for you, is rely on the bomber?
Yes. Always have the bomber on board.
That's just good life lesson, really.
Yeah,
So what else? All right, we agree that fishing is resilient to COVID. It actually, I'm pretty sure, grew the sport. Just looking at numbers in terms of people renewing their license and getting a fishing license for the first time, fishing is up. Bad news is, a lesson learned is stockpile your tackle, because it just became impossible. It's still, I mean, one of the biggest issues that we have is just getting inventory in. It's been absolutely nuts. I mean, groups like Daiwa, I mean, that Fuego has been sold out nationwide now for months, and it's still not in. They promised us it was going to be before Christmas, and just so many different supply chain issues. Same with TFO rods. That was our top selling rod, and we haven't had it, Luke, what, 5 months now? More? Brutal.
I'm in January now. The date's January, it should be right. And Bill Deweese just left a funny comment. So the as far as the lesson of the year, and it was if you have a GPS trolling motor, never leave home without the remote. Apparently he did that. I think he drove like an hour and a half to go to an area, and then got there and there's no remote. And if you have a GPS trolling motor and no remote, means no bueno, no working at all.
It's just like when Tony went an hour on a kayak trip and brought the kayak but forgot the paddle. But that was before the pedal drive. That's kind of tough.
I'll wrap myself out. I went fishing with Wader Dave. I guess it was just a couple weeks ago, and totally got there and I forgot my rod. Like I was leaving. I knew I was forgetting something, and I had like my wader, because I had to bring my waders, all of my wading boots. I had to like spend a lot of time knocking the dust off of it and finding it. And I got there and I was just like, I was like, I'm so sorry, I forgot my rod.
You fished with his extra one or something?
Oh, we ended up, it took, like Cody was there too. He had to get dressed, and I was only 5 minutes from my house. So I jetted back. So I still got it. But felt like an idiot.
Oh, I love it. Why don't we talk about leader line in particular? That was, to me, that was a big lesson. You know, and I'm talking about fluoro versus mono is one argument. Then you have fluoro just line versus fluoro leader line. I don't know who wants to tackle this one first, but this is a little controversial. But at the same point, we have no skin in the game here. We offer both on our site, but kind of the science side of it is kind of leaning one way, which is interesting.
Yeah, I'll hit it, because I've been I'm not afraid of ruffling some feathers, because I have support. I mean, I've been doing some pretty detailed tests on the mono versus fluoro, and as far as abrasion resistance, which I'm most concerned with going after snook, in territory with a lot of snook, is that abrasion resistance is a huge factor, more so than visibility, and the visibility part is still I guess unsolved, whether one's less visible than the other. But as far as abrasion resistance, regular monofilament, the cheaper line, is actually better at abrasion resistance while costing a whole lot less. So this whole year, I've gone all mono. So I literally have not been using fluoro at all. Just to kind of
caught a couple fish this year.
Yeah, just to see if it was like a noticeable difference one way or the other. Because last year I was kind of going back and forth. I couldn't tell a difference, and this year too. Again, I didn't feel a change, even when the water's super clear, sight fishing up in the shallows. Mono still gets the job done. So I can't say that one's better than the other, but I can just say conclusively that you don't have to get fluorocarbon. You can do well with mono.
So let's dig a little bit deeper though. So you mentioned visibility, right? That you haven't determined that because you haven't done an experiment.
I actually have a whole test assembly. I've been waiting on the water to get a little bit more clear. So I'm gonna string like 30 lines all in a row and get some underwater footage of the lines and like different angles from the light, different backgrounds, and just see if there's a noticeable difference or not. Granted, it's not perfect. Like I don't know of any way to truly test the visibility of the lines underwater. But in that one test, I did a test on the sink rate of mono versus fluoro. Fluoro proved to sink about 2.5 times faster, but mono sinks too. So like a big myth is that monofilament floats, and they both sink. It's just that one sinks a little bit faster than the other.
And then what about all the knot strength?
Yeah, I mean the knots. I now that I have this better tester, I can do some more on that. But from what I've done so far, it seems pretty clear that the regular monofilament line is better at holding knots than fluoro. I can't say the exact difference though. But Tony, what looks like you're? I know you've been doing some of each too, or doing mostly fluoro still.
Mostly fluoro, but I found like this year I switched from, I was mainly using Cigar Blue Label fluorocarbon like for years.
What's the
And
high
this
end?
year, what was up?
That's like the top tier stuff, just in case anybody didn't know.
Yeah, Cigar Blue Label. Cigar Gold Label is like, I don't know, 30 or $40 for 50 yards, but the Blue Label, it's like 15 or $20 for, I think it's 25 or 50 yards or something like that.
25.
And I switched to Berkeley Vanish, which is, like $10 for 50 yards or something like that, just so it's cheaper. Started using that, and I noticed a difference in fishing for snook, like using 20-pound Berkeley Vanish versus 20-pound Cigar Blue Label. The Blue Label, I was getting broken off all the time from the snook, like just rubbing through. And the Berkeley Vanish, it would be really frayed up by the time I got those fish in, but I rarely had them break through that leader, unless, of course, it was like a 35, 36-inch snook. But the biggest difference I found just by feeling the leader is that the Berkeley Vanish was softer, very similar to how mono is. Mono is softer than fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon seems to be very stiff. So I think that definitely had a somewhat of a play in, how that abrasion resistance was.
Yeah, that's totally in line with the tester, because I did the Blue Label, Cigar Blue Label, which is the most, I think it's $20 for 25. It's like $1 per yard, which again, it's not a ton of money, but like over time, over a year fishing, it's a pretty big deal. And then you get the Vanish for like half the price, if not more. And that did better. But then like the regular Andy monofilament and the Berkeley Big Game and this regular Stren, all three of those even beat the Stren or the Vanish too. So it's and they're all way less expensive. So it's, to me, that was the biggest eye opener, is that the different lines, the performance doesn't always match the price tag, I guess is what I would say the biggest lesson learned.
For sure.
And on the visibility part, we have, because some people that have never done any experiments, they've heard this and they'll say on Facebook, oh, well, my fluoro is invisible to the fish. We have done countless underwater like B-roll footage of like, Slam Shady with fluoro and mono. You can see it and it's not invisible. And talk about something that like we should probably bring up if we're so worried about the line. I mean, the thing that the fish is actually attacking, I mean, there's a massive hook hanging out of it in a jig head. I mean, either way you look at it, there's like a lot of kind of red alarms, like, woo, this is a big red flag. If you're a fish and you could see all this stuff. So I think people get a little too carried away on and one, it's just not invisible. But this whole, hey, it's so much tougher for fish to see it. And when we put all kinds of crazy terminal tackle stuff and, I mean, I don't know, if the fish were that smart, they would probably see the massive hook hanging out of these jig heads at some point. But go for it, Tony.
I was going to say that leads to another thing I sort of realized with leader line. The thicker it is, as it's moving through the water, when you go to twitch that lure, that line creates a pressure change in the water. So that fish may see that small lure, but it feels something bigger, because it can feel the line moving in the water. So if you're like sight casting the fish in really shallow water, it can be really good to go thinner on your leader material, just because it's not going to put, it's not going to make as much of a pressure change as you're twitching that lure. So that's one thing I definitely realized this year as well.
And to that point, some people might be thinking that, back to the fluorocarbon discussion, so fluorocarbon, like a 20-pound fluorocarbon is going to be a little bit thinner than a 20-pound monofilament line. So they might think, okay, well, the reason why fluorocarbon tested worse was because it's a little bit thinner. So I tested for the line diameter as well. So one test, I did a 25-pound fluoro against a 20-pound monofilament line. So the fluoro was just slightly thicker. I was trying to get an even close, but an even diameter, but I couldn't find one. And the 20-pound mono still beat the 25-pound fluoro. So again, it's not just about the line diameter. It's just the actual, whatever it is, when they make that fluorocarbon, it must like harden the line because it makes it more dense. And it seems like whatever that is, it actually made it a little bit more brittle. So like when like a sandpapery type substance, like a snook thrashed in its mouth, or a tarpon, or even a bass, it'll have better odds of actually rubbing through than just a regular monofilament line.
Austin, what about you? Have you switched over? Are you still using a little bit of both?
I use a little bit of both, not for much of a reason though. I use mono, and I've been using mono for a long time. And Luke actually had a lot to do with that, because years ago I seen him talking about something with that as far as the abrasion goes. And if he's using mono in Tampa in that clean water, over here in Jacksonville in this dirty water, it's definitely going to work here. So I pretty much switch to mono most of the time. And when I do use fluorocarbon, I'm typically using just regular fluorocarbon fishing line, like the Vanish, and it tends to work great.
Yeah, and like I said, we have all of it at fishstrong.com, which is our store where insiders get the 20% off. And we have Andy Mono, which is, I think it was on their site that more world records have been caught and are still standing to this day on Andy mono line as a leader than any other, brand or type mono versus fluoro out there. So that kind of tells you something, that you can still catch some of the biggest fish in the world using old school thing. And you're welcome, Andy. We're not sponsored by Andy mono, but it is good stuff. It's affordable. To me, just looking at that price difference and knowing what we know about at least 2 of the 3 tests of the whole mono versus fluoro, it's mind-boggling that people would spend that as much as they do for 25 yards of fluoro leader line.
Well, just think how much money has gone in marketing, right? I mean, that's what it is. Because I personally thought that fluorocarbon was invisible. Like I thought that for a while. I thought that fluorocarbon was better at abrasion. So when I did that first abrasion test, I had already concluded that fluorocarbon would win. I just wanted to see how much better it was. And so the first time I did it in mono 1, I was blown away because it was blue label, it was Seaguar blue label against Andy mono. And I was totally blown away. And it's all recorded too. So if you want to see any of these things, you can get on Salt Strong, and at the bottom, and there's a little section for lines, and all these tests are recorded. So you can see exactly what the process was and critique it however you feel fit. Because I want these to be as accurate as possible. And I want them to be as unbiased as possible. So there's nothing hidden, no hidden agenda. This is literally just a genuine quest to find the best lines for our money. And so far, again, I've been blown away by just the regular mono. So like in Austin, like in places like St. Augustine, Jacksonville, really any area with murky water, because the only benefit that I've have yet to be able to test accurately is the visibility spectrum. And fluorocarbon scientifically is supposed to be better because it has less refraction of light. So it's the refractive index. And in murky water, it doesn't really matter, as we talked about earlier. But the clear water, it could very well matter. It's just how much so. But I saw a funny thing. So Kyle Wilder had a lesson learned on here, and it's just because you've never been seasick doesn't mean you won't ever get seasick. Spent 6 hours sleeping and chumming. The water's 80 miles out. That's never fun.
That's brutal.
Never fun.
That is brutal. What else, guys, besides this whole leader line? What's been some other big lessons learned?
Or go for it.
Awesome. I got a tendency to be that fisherman that sees the stuff on the shelf and buys it, knowing that I'm never going to use it, but it just looks so appealing that I buy it anyway. And I'll clean my boat, and I'll fill up 5-gallon buckets with soft plastics and all these lures, and I do not need all of that. So one of the biggest lessons that I'm learning currently is just stick with your confidence baits. Simplicity is key, big time. Even though that's hard to do, but you don't need all that stuff.
Yeah, that Christmas tree over there is proof that it can get out of control when you have a fishing habit, and that's barely touched my lure inventory.
Is there a big portion, if you guys are listening, Luke just showed his Christmas tree, and instead of ornaments, it's, I don't know, 50, 60 hard baits, it looks like from here.
It's got to be more than that, but there's a lot of
any come straight out of the package.
Yes, or some, no, all of them have been used, or at least I've pulled them out to try to use them, but there were some with like 0 rust on the hooks that I've had for 10 years, so they surely have never seen the water.
So I just recently downsized my tackle boxes. Now I'm using this little small Plano. It's got 6 little compartments in there, and that's all I take for hard baits. Spoons, top waters, twitch baits. And then my bigger box actually has all my hooks and jig heads. I think that's more important than, having 20 or 30 different lures. With hooks and jig heads, you can use, let's say, you got the Slam Shady here. You can use that on a jig head if you want to present it one way. You can use it on a worm hook if you want to present it another way. Just having more hooks and jig heads as opposed to a bunch of different lures can definitely be more of a benefit.
Yeah, depth control is crucial. And yeah, I agree with Tony. My jig head collection is large because if you're not at the right depth at the right time, no matter how good the lure is, you're not gonna catch anything. And if you are at the right depth, even if they're feeding on shrimp and you have a bait fish lure, if you ever get right in their face, they'll likely take a swipe at it.
Speaking of tackle tray, I've realized the importance of a good tackle tray. I think a lot of us, including me, was just kind of going cheap with just the regular little 2 little snaps. I don't know if it's a Plano who makes the thing, and meaning it's not waterproof and not really sealed. And the stuff, when it flips over, kids flip it over, especially your hooks are just everywhere. I never understood why someone would spend $20 or $30 for a tackle tray, and I'm starting to understand it now.
The weedless ones are crucial.
Yes. And now they got the ones with the rust proof for 5 years and all that stuff that you can actually, use the lure in salt water. And then obviously you still need to rinse the thing off, but put it in to this tray. And apparently up to 5 years, the sucker will stay rust proof. I haven't had the time to try that, but apparently they say it does. Who do you use? Is that a Plano one, Tony?
Yeah, this is the Plano. Just bought this one. This is a Plano third. I don't know the numbers, but it's a small one. Has 6, however many compartments you want, but each compartment is like about 4 inches wide.
It's probably the 3500, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I think so. I think this one is the 3600.
Yeah. Have you seen those new ones they came out with? Because we have Plano and Flambeau on the Fish Strong site. We got the new ones coming in for 2021. The Edge, I think it is, where you have 3 different things you got to pop off, and sometimes they get kind of, this one you can just do with one hand, and it secures it just as well as that one. Like, they put all their time and energy of solving, all right, instead of having like pop 3 things off every single time, just one handle that you can do with one hand. Have you got that one yet? Look at Tony. He's already got it. He's hiding it. He's like, all right. Is that it? No, I think it's a yellow one.
I was just going to talk about something else.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go for it.
No, I don't know if you guys seen it yet, but the do-it-yourself jig box that I made, you can make it any size you want, but basically put EVA foam in the bottom of an open container, and, you can hook whatever baits you want into there. Just hook it in there. That keeps them from sliding around and getting tangled up. You can make however big of a box you want, small of a box, just like a fly box, basically. And that can help keep your stuff organized as well.
That was a good tip. And speaking of Tony Zapata says, my 9-year-old outfishes me. Proud dad. He asked for Slam Shadies for Christmas. This is the only lures he uses. Love it. 9-year-olds using the Slam Shady, baby.
Smart son right there.
That is awesome. So cool. All right, what else? You guys see any good questions? What else was an aha moment for you? Anything with rods, reels? We talked in a prior video about having to use tackle that we weren't used to using just because you couldn't find the stuff that we normally were using out there anywhere.
Yeah, mine on the rods, I would say just kind of further concluded what I thought is that medium light rods, I really cannot stand them. Every time I've had to switch, whether I've been testing out different rods, my hookup ratio plummets, absolutely plummets, particularly when using weedless soft plastics, which I use a lot, just because there's just a lot of hook power lost when that rod is doing that really long arcing bend. And then, and so now I do everything medium heavy, fast action rods. So that way it has good backbone. It has just the tip doing most of the bending, so that, you know, it still needs to be a lightweight rod. That way you can feel everything really well. But so you can feel it, you can get a good strong hook set when you need it. And it still is flexible enough to cast little light lures. Like even like these little sheepshead crab lures, you can still cast these little guys with at least a good medium heavy rod, as long as it's a solid rod.
Did you see, by the way, we got those in today?
Oh yeah, I saw that. That's awesome. Yeah, those are perfect timing too, because those sheepshead are starting to show up.
Yeah, get them while they're hot. Fishstrong.com. We have actually we got the shrimp too, the chase bait shrimp. So we got the prawn, whatever they're calling them, and then also those crabs. That was big. I said Brett Cox, Bubba Love dropping, what do you say, $45 on the Buzzbees. It's a type of a tackle tray container. Yeah, those are not. I mean, anytime you're spending $45, they better be nice and waterproof. And I'm interested in try these Plano ones, because that seems to be they won the best in show or best new technology, whatever, at ICAST for it. I love the fact it's just one hand. I can't stand that when I'm on the boat and you got the old school waterproof Planos and you got to unlock all three, and there's always one that's giving you trouble and you're like, I'm gonna throw it over the side.
Yeah, I just use one. I have those things. I just use one if I'm on the boat. That way,
keep the other two open all the time.
Not all the time, but when I'm on the boat, if I use it once, I just leave the two open, and then when I'm done, I latch up all three.
It's like going to a Chick-fil-A without a mask on, Luke. Really dangerous. Living on the edge.
Oh, pretty wild.
Make so much noise too when you open them up, close them. I've seen fish and mullet and bait spook off whenever I've closed them before.
Yeah, one question came in from Donnie about so he's having trouble with an X-Wrap front hook getting over the line and lure, disturbing the motion of the bait. Tony, do you guys use those X-Wraps?
Yeah, I actually made a video. I just posted a link in the comments on how to avoid your leader line from getting tangled up on the front hook. It happens on quite a few lures that have those inline hooks. And if the front hook is too big, you'll have that issue. Also, if you use a loop knot, you may want to try using a knot that's snug to the eye. So if you use a loop knot, the line's going to hang down. And if you use a snug knot, the line will sort of stick out a little bit to keep that hook from wrapping around the leader line.
That's good. Luke, go back to the rod. Is there a certain brand, or we've also done some tests on the length of the rod? Anything to share there in terms of any big lessons for this year?
On the brands, no. I mean, it's every brand. Like, there's a lot of good ones, a lot of bad ones. As far as length,
who are the bad ones?
You know, that's what we reserve that for the Insider Club. There's a link in there that you'll see as part of the Insider Club was we give the overall, you know, cross brand analysis, and you'll see it. It focuses more on the good ones. It's never fun to put things down, but I won't do that on the public setting. As far as some good ones I have been testing, I've really liked the Bull Bay rods. So that's been a new one that I started using that I've been really impressed with, particularly the Stealth Sniper. Really like that one. As far as the length, I'm still going with 7.6. I did get a couple 7-footers, and I mean, I really can't tell much of a difference between the two. What I need to do is I've been meaning to do it. I just haven't had time on a calm day, is to actually do a casting test with like a 7-foot rod, a 7.6, and an 8-foot, and just see what the difference is, if any. I think it's more about, you know, if everything else is constant and just the rod length was different, I think the rod length would matter. But it just comes to like how fast it snaps back, right? If you have a long 8-foot rod and a 7-foot rod that does a really quick snapback, odds are the 7-foot rod can cast further. I just think if you try to cast a jerk bait, like a slam shady on a jig head with a 9-foot fly rod, like how slow that rod releases, you won't be able to cast it 40 feet. And you can put it on a 7-foot rod with fast action, and you can launch it with way less effort. So a lot of it is it's more than just one factor, long story short.
I'll agree on those bull bays. Oh, go ahead, Tony. Sorry.
I just said the line, the rod, and the angler all come into play.
Yeah, the casting technique too. If some people have a slower cast, which would probably make a different rod a little bit better suited. So it's it's more than just one variable for sure. What were we saying, Austin?
Oh, I was just going to commend the bull bays. I got one not too long ago, and it has quickly become pretty much my favorite rod. And specifically, I go do a lot of different types of fishing. So I'll be throwing lures one minute, and as you guys seen in my insider report, I went and I caught redfish and flounder, and then I went and caught those sheep's head. That's something that I really like to do a lot. But the sheep's head, you really want a sensitive rod. You really want to feel that bite. And man, the medium heavy 7-foot bull bay is absolutely the most sensitive rod that I've ever had.
Is it the stealth sniper as well?
Yes.
Yep. Cool.
Daniel Garcia, go fishing more. Amen, brother. Yeah. Speaking of the sheep's head, that was an aha moment. I guess earlier this year, January, is how well those little fake crabs work. I mean,
yeah.
Dang.
That's true. That was this year, wasn't it? I was thinking that was last year, but I don't think I started doing it until January.
Yeah, I started in February. Started really getting into sheep's head fishing. Learned quite a lot too. I can share some stuff once you guys.
Yeah, so the crabs, I'll just start. So these are my 2 crabs. Like when I'm going sheep's head fishing, if I don't have at least one of these, ideally a few, then I'm like I don't feel comfortable, right? Because this one is awesome for just going down the pilings when those sheep's head are up in the pilings. This has a really slow sink, and those sheep's head smack it. So you can sight fish them off the pilings. It's a blast. If they're hanging on the bottom, this guy from Savage Gear, this one's been awesome too, where it just drags on the bottom. Like when you pull it, it's basically like going away from the sheep's head. It looks like it's a natural, a crab like actually trying to get away. So chase baits and then Savage Gear, and those are and they're actually some of the least expensive crab lures out there as well.
And they'll last a lot. I mean, the material is super tough. The risk obviously is getting it stuck on a piling or whatever structures down underneath some of these docks, because you're usually having to fish some type of structure, obviously, to catch the sheep's head. But you can catch multiple on one crab.
Yeah, you can't skip it a lot. So when I first started, I was like getting aggressive with my skips. I was like skipping way up under the docks, like getting the back pilings, which is a mistake for a couple of reasons. Number one is that when you do hook a big sheep's head, they're actually pretty strong, and I got broke off a lot. And so then I wisened up and I just fished the outer pilings, and then all you have to do is get them away from one piling. It's way easier than pulling them out of like through a maze of pilings. It's almost guaranteed break off. But also number 2 is that this material, put it right up there close, there's a little thin strip right up there. And if you skip cast it too frequently and too hard, like too aggressive, you're doing like a 10-foot skip under the docks, it'll eventually wear off this little piece, and it breaks off, and then it's pretty much game over. So I learned that the hard way. So don't skip them. You can skip them every once in a while, just don't skip them every cast like super hard. But it's a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, I really started getting more into sheep's head fishing earlier in the year for the first time, really. And to Austin's point about the rod sensitivity, definitely learned that. I was using some old rods and they were really flimsy. Wasn't really feeling the bites. And then I started, I started using, more expensive rods, but it really came down to the action or the power. The more stiffer the rod was, the more sensitive it was. And I learned the hard way not to use your really nice rods when sheep's head fishing, because you're fishing tight around structure. In this case, I was fishing, pilings that were maybe 2 feet next to each other. And then you had a little walkway above it. And I was fishing under the walkway, and I'd get a bite, have a fish on, fish came off, rod flipped up and smacked the walkway, and it was the end of that rod. Yeah. So if you're going to use, equipment for sheep's head fishing, go with something that's a little stiffer. And also I call them my beat up rods now. Like they're all beat up. I use beat up reels for it too. You don't really need anything fancy. Really comes down to the power and the action of the rod.
Love it. Let's move into reels versus rods. We've hammered this a few times before about the importance of the rod, and especially here in inshore fishing, and what purpose that serves. And then we got the reels, which still get a lot of the limelight. They're still the most exciting. If we do a video on top reels, which we've done, that was a podcast that got tons of downloads. We did one with Bill on saltwater bait casting reels, and the rods don't get as much love, but they're, would you say, more important in most cases?
For people using lures, way more important.
What about live bait?
Not as much, because I mean the bait's doing most of the work. So like live bait, especially if you're like cut bait fishing, right? You literally just toss it out and then let it sit, and especially using a circle hook too, like you just let it sit and then you just reel in and slowly, and then the fish hooks itself. If you're using a lure, you have to feel the strike, quickly set the hook. There's just a lot more,
and
make more accurate
cast. I think it kind of starts with a cast, right?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you have to make casts either way. But you got to probably have, I would argue, you would need to be a little bit a better accuracy for lures, because you're just doing a lot more cast, and if you don't get that lure in the strike zone, you're not going to catch fish. Whereas with live bait, you can cast short or cast up current, and the bait can actually swim into the strike zone in many cases. So I would argue that the rod, particularly for artificial lure fishermen, is way more important than the reel.
I don't know why everyone just doesn't use those Cuban yo-yos all the time. When do you need a rod?
Somewhere of me using one, catching black drum.
Did you put a video out there on it?
What's up?
You put a video out there on it?
Yeah, I put a video out a few years ago using it just had some, I can't remember. I think I did have braid on it, and that was a bad choice. Just trying to, hand line the braid while having a 15 pound drum on.
Remember that was right when you joined Salt Strong. I remember that was back in the day.
Was on a school of drum. I had it with me. Just realized it was like, let me try to catch one of these fish on this thing. So you don't even need a rod, really.
That's pretty funny. Shane Self, my biggest fishing lesson for 2020 is if you want to catch more fish, join Salt Strong. You won't regret it. The Insider Club is awesome. Shane, I'd say he deserves a touchdown pass. Man, that's huge. Thanks, dude. We didn't have to pay him for that either. Or maybe we do. Maybe. Did Shane just win the Monday night giveaway, Austin? Is that what happened?
Maybe next week. We'll see.
Thanks, Shane. That's good. What else we got? See, Humboldt. I mainly surf for pompano and whiting with the hopes of a redder drum. This has been a fruitless year for me. So to be humble, that would be the best way I could describe my biggest lesson. That's part of fishing is taking a little bite of the humble pie. I did it 2 weeks ago. I guess it just went live this week with that 30 or 40 minute trip that I did with Luke. I couldn't catch anything. And looking back, what's cool, and this is the beauty of the on the water tips that we provide, our insider members, is being able to watch someone. It's very similar to game film. All the pros, spend a big chunk. I mean, they're only, playing in terms of an actual, like, on the field, a really short amount of time in a given week, right? I mean, we're talking an hour or so, and a whole lot less for a lot of the players because they're not playing on both sides. And yet they'll spend hours and hours and hours watching game film to learn from their mistakes and also to study their opponent. And I learned so much from watching that, because I got skunked in that short amount of time when we were live with the camera. And Luke, caught, 8 or 9 fish in a really short amount of time. And I was just watching the retrieval speed. It was like, and I think I just drank some coffee that morning. It was like I was just all jolted up. And like, holy smokes, we were using a different lure, but same weight, right? I think you had a quarter ounce and so did I. We were fishing the same boat. We're fishing the same structure. And I was just going way too fast. And so that lesson, the humble pie that I had to eat, was just like, watch what I'm doing and watch someone who's doing it better than me and slow it down. Did you watch that, Luke? Did you notice like how quick I was reeling?
I noticed on the water. I wasn't about to say anything though.
Oh, thanks. Jeez Louise.
And the coffee makes sense because you were yapping up a storm. So that explains it.
Well, I got to, part of it's a podcast. We're trying to make it entertaining. So I'm like, all right. But at the same point, I want to catch fish. I don't want to look like a doofus. So I had to take a big, thank you, Sean, for sharing that. Because that's true. And I think that's what keeps us all like excited about fishing. Because it kind of could get boring if you just caught 1,000 fish every single time. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it would be freaking awesome. But my goal is to get tight lines every single time. And obviously, ideally to catch some type of slam, big or small. But looking back at that footage and or joining the Insider Club and watching all the on the water footage, I mean, to me, it's so powerful. You can learn so much from it.
And that day in particular, that really goes back to what we talked about earlier, where depth control is so important, particularly in the winter months where those fish are going to be a little bit more lethargic. They're not going to travel a great distance to eat. And if you don't get right in their face, they're not going to eat it. It's literally as simple as that. And so what Joe should have done that I wasn't about to tell him was he was using the paddle tail. I was using the shrimp lure. We had the same size jig head, but the paddle tail has a lot more water resistance. So it's not going to sink quite as fast. And so what he should have done is either switch to a heavier jig head, which he didn't have any, or I would have taken off the tail. He should have cut the tail off, gone tailless, and now that bait is going to get down in the deep stuff.
It was a Z-man though, so it's a little bit tougher to.
Yeah, you can still if you try hard enough, you're going to get that tail off. Just take some scissors, you can pull it hard enough, it'll come off. But yeah, so depth control, that was the only difference, and it made an enormous impact. For anybody who saw that video, it was a big impact. I was on fire up front, and Joe just couldn't make it happen. So I was having a blast. That was the most fun trip of the year.
You had all the shrimp lure, the magic shrimp lures.
But you outfished me the time before that, and you were talking a lot of smack. So it was just karma. And the whole time I was thinking, I was like, "Yep, karma." He was really laying into me the prior trip when you're getting all this trout, and I wasn't catching much.
To touch on the whole getting skunked thing too, we all get skunked. I get skunked. Luke gets skunked. Austin, Joe, Wyatt, we all do. And you have to take that as a learning experience, especially, while you're on the water and you realize you're having a bad day. Don't get frustrated while you're on the water, because that's just going to create a chain reaction of things to happen throughout the day. That's going to make it an even worse day. So your mindset when you're on the water is definitely key to having a successful day. If first thing in the morning, when you start loading your boat or your kayak or whatever the case may be, things don't start going right, just dust it off. Like, don't think anything of it. Because when you get out there on the water and you do get on the water frustrated, it's just going to create a snowball effect. So definitely make sure you have the right mindset when you're out there on the water.
So critical. And all the pros say that over and over again. The guys who are fishing the high stakes bass tournaments and the redfish tournaments is, everyone in a tournament, you want to go catch fish in the first hour, and all of a sudden 3-4 hours go by and you still don't have a fish in the boat to count. It can get stressful, and you do what I did. You start speeding stuff up and you get frustrated, and it's just a snowball effect of bad things. So I'm glad you brought that up. Michael DeWitt says, "Don't buy cheap line. That's my 2020 mistake." I'm interested to know what line it is, but that is 100% a legit mistake. I know some of it we talked about earlier is around the marketing, and there's some brands who just for whatever reason the consumer's eyes just sound better, and some of them aren't. I mean, that's the beauty of taking more of a science-based approach, like Luke does with these experiments, and buying $1,000 line tester so you can actually see exactly down to the 0.00 decimal which one's really stronger and which one has the strongest knots, etc. Luke, have you found any brands to avoid, or to say, hey, like this is one of the best, or any surprising ones without throwing anyone underneath the bus too bad?
Well, I'll do this. So my most surprisingly bad one has been the Spiderwire Invisibraid. I heard like just really good reviews about it, and I was compared against Power Pro. I did a casting contest. It beat Power Pro by like 2% on day one, which is okay. This is off a good start. And so I do that, and then I actually use it for a while just to see, how the lines actually perform after usage. And its performance plummeted relative. It seemed like the performance, as soon as that little outer coating, so it's a braid, it's an 8-strand braid with a little bit of a wax coating on it. And as soon as that wax rubbed off, the casting performance plummeted. And the knot strength wasn't, I guess knot strength was pretty close, but just the casting distance plummeted faster than any other braid I've tested. So I wasn't very happy with it. And conversely, like my Power Pro, it almost felt like it was getting better, but it was probably just because it was so much better than the other one. So like the normal 4-strand Power Pro, the original stuff, has been like surprisingly consistent in these tests. The one that I recently tested that surprised me for the good was Finn's Wind Tamer, particularly with the knot strength. Blew me away. It was it's a 10-pound line. Generally, the 10-pound braids are breaking in the 15 to 17 pound range with the uni knot, and then like the 17 to 20 pound range with the FG knot. And this Finn's, I was just doing the uni knot. Again, I was expecting like a 17-pound breaking strength, and it averaged 21 pounds. So it was significantly higher than what I've seen with Power Pro. So I'll be doing some more tests on that. And I did a casting distance on that versus Suffix 832, and the Fins basically held true. It was pretty much a wash. So it's casting just as good as Suffix, which is known to be a good line. I've just started testing that, and the knot strength just totally blew everything else out of the water. So that was pretty cool to see that.
That is cool.
If you use something that works, there's really no point in trying to change it. Like I've been using the original 4-strand Power Pro ever since I started bass fishing, a while ago. And I basically transitioned that over to Inshore, and it works just fine. I've tried, the Suffix 832 and the Power Pro V2 Slick, and I've always resorted back to what I've been comfortable using.
You guys use the J braid at all?
I haven't yet. That's on my list. That's next on my list to go get.
I haven't tried it either. But I'm with Tony on that. Sticking with the Power Pro, the 4-strand has worked good for me. And the biggest differences that I've noticed is that Power Pro, like Luke said, just lasts longer. I've used those cheap Amazon braids, the super cheap stuff, and they work good at first, but then they just wear out so fast. It's like that coating wears off. It really seemed like I was getting more wind knots too. I think because just more resistance from not having that coating on the line. But yeah, just sticking with that regular Power Pro has been the ticket for me.
And one thing to be mindful of for those who are testing out different lines, and this has come up a few times, particularly with the 8-strand braids that have that little wax coating on there, is that the knots. So it significantly increases the odds that the knot's going to slip, because braid by itself is it's just like, doing a braid knot, you pretty much need to double all the wraps compared to a mono knot. It just has the much lower friction coefficient, for a scientific term. And when you add that wax there, it makes it so much worse, because then that wax can give, and before you know it, that knot slips out. So that happened with the Invisibraid a couple times, and it happened a bunch of times with the Suffix 832 line, where I'd be testing knot strength. I'd be tying the knots I've tied for years, and I've never once had it pull out on a 4-strand braid. When I go to that 8-strand with the wax, the knot literally pulls out. And it doesn't do it like 5 pounds. Like when you do your tests before you make a cast, it seems good, but instead of breaking at 17 to 20 pounds, it breaks at like 11 or 12. And that's an easy way to lose a fish of a lifetime, right? A fish makes a big run, or tarpon jumps and does a head shake, and that's just enough power to make that knot come undone and game over. And you have no idea. You have no idea that you're not pulled out, because it comes out pretty straight, right? Braid has no memory. So when it happens, like, it looked normal, but I mean, it was a 12-pound break versus the other. And I had the residual, right? When we do those knots in a controlled setting, you can see the other side of it. And the knot was basically there. Like the mono side was still intact, and you can see all of the braid was totally gone. The fix though is easy. You just take your fingernail and just scrape it off. So before you tie your knot, scrape off that wax, and then you tie your knot. And then once I started doing that, no problems at all. But that's a big risk for people who aren't doing that. It's a big risk for those 8-strand braids. So just wanted to make sure people were mindful of that.
Way to say it. I saw Justin Ritchie, our boy Justin, commenting, helping Chuck out there. Yeah, Chuck, you don't stink at fishing, Chuck. You're a great guy, and doggone it, people like you. And the fish will as well. Once you, it could be the same issue I have. I mean, just because you're fishing in structure, as the comment, doesn't mean you're gonna, catch fish. And I mean, that video, if you want to go watch it and get a laugh at me, is proof. I mean, Luke and I are on the same boat, fishing the same structure. He catches 9 fish in 30 minutes. I catch 0. And a lot of it was I wasn't getting to the bottom. So that could be it. You mentioned a paddle tail. I think some people in their minds think, oh, paddle tail, I'm just going to cast it and just start doing a straight retrieve. Let it hit the bottom. See what happens. Do some pops off the bottom, especially this time of year. Had I done that and slowed it down, I guarantee Luke was just on fire. I wasn't going to beat him that day, but I certainly would have caught some fish.
And sometimes that darting motion, again, tearing the tail off, just having that darting motion, sometimes they like that, where it's just like short little darts and then it falls down. It's better than like a slower kind of movement. So don't be afraid if you're having to use a paddle tail and not having much luck. A quick change of just taking that tail off can often be a benefit.
And if it makes you feel any better, Chuck, I've gone 3 to 4 weeks on a dry spell before, and I've lived here my whole life. You've been here for 2 weeks, haven't landed anything. I'd say you've got plenty of time.
And sometimes it helps just to go buy some shrimp and go hit a bridge or something and just catch a bunch of fish, even if it's small little snapper and sea bass and stuff, just to get the confidence going again. There's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people do tend to get skunked because they're going after larger fish, and you start going after more trophy fish. It can get hard, especially during certain times of the year and certain tide cycles. I think something that's good for everyone is just take a friend out, take a kid, go by yourself, whatever it is, just get some old school shrimp and a couple of weights and fish them bridges.
Or just like troll the edge of the flats or something, where the ladyfish and stuff are, just to kind of get the mojo back.
Yep.
Sometimes you got to do it.
Yep. Cool. What else, guys? Anything else here? I know we're already hitting our time limit. Any other big aha moments, biggest lessons?
I think that covers. I just think with the increased traffic on the water this year made me set more than normal amount of spots I'm going to hit up. So usually I would do like 3 to 5 spots, and there'd be somebody on one, and then there wouldn't be fish on one, and then there at least one would be good. And now there's going to be like people on a lot of them. So I just had to just plan for that. It's because years ago I would have just gone to like the couple spots that I knew, and there's somebody on there on both of them, and then like the wheels fall off and I'm frustrated. Oh man, like all my spots are taken, that sky's falling. Like all you need to do is just find a similar 2 spot right around the corner. In most cases, there's going to be fish there too. So I think just being just plan on having to check out more spots. I think it was the biggest lesson that I had this year, particularly when filming, because even on weekdays, do you remember that in that March when you came over and it was a Wednesday and it felt like a normal Saturday? There were people everywhere. Like all my top spots had people on it. So we had to change plans and target trout on the outside of the flats instead of redfish up near the trees. So
and that's one of the biggest, like most powerful things about the Insider Club, besides the on the water fishing tips and the, the discounts, is the smart game plan that we do every Friday. Luke gets on there and you basically curates every fishing report in our entire community, and in 10 minutes or less spells out, here's the types of areas. That's why I think so many people get infatuated with the spot and, hey, what's the GPS spot, and tell me exactly where you're fishing. They get on Instagram and zoom into the backgrounds to see if they can figure out where the people were. And occasionally that can be helpful, but what's more helpful long-term to be able to predict where the fish will be is to know the trends. And that's what we focus on at the Insider Club, is all about the trends, the type of spots, so that if you do get out there a little bit late, or it's just some crazy day where everyone's got the day off or COVID calls it, whatever it is, and you're 5, 10, whatever your spots are all taken, that you'll know quickly, all right, you know what? Salt Strong told me I should be looking for these kind of spots. I'm going to go create my own. And to me, that's the most rewarding. When all of a sudden you have a banner day in a brand new area you've never tried. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, that's how you get your spot in the first place. At some point you had to fish it for the first time and it was good. And the more of those you have, the better off you're going to be. We had that one 90-10 webinar, Luke, that we did. And it started off, it's truth is you're only as good as your spots. And those spots are going to come from understanding the trends, which is what we focus on. So just one more reason to come join us in the Insider Club. We're actually approaching 20,000 members here soon, which is really exciting. It's just been something that we've always talked about. Hey, how cool would it? I remember when we were at 2,000 and we were like, oh my gosh, maybe one day we'll be at 20,000 members. And it's so cool to see this grow. And it's like a family. I'm on there now an hour or two a day. I know, Austin, you're on there many hours a day. It's crazy how much engagement, how many fishing reports are going up. It's like every time I refresh it, there's new reports and new videos and new fish pics going up from the members. It's really cool.
Absolutely awesome. I mean, it's a family. It really is a family. Go look at Facebook and then come check out the Insider Club and the world of difference that you will see. I mean, it's hard to believe. Yeah, it really is.
I think we have 0 snook candy comments.
Snook candy not allowed. No cursing. We actually have bleeped out permanently any curse words. There's no negativity. We just don't tolerate it. And yeah, you're right, Tony. We might have actually bleeped that out. Snook candy just got way too overused in Facebook. So
yeah, but it's just, and some people think that it's for newbies, and it's not. I mean, because people who are in there are not newbies for very long, because it really is in depth with the actual behaviors of fish based on the conditions. You know, as cold fronts come in, what do they do? As the temperatures are fluctuating, as storms come in, what do they do? And it just helps everybody get dialed in. And with so many members, and there's a private community where people post their own reports. We're getting like 50 a day, I believe, something that's a crazy amount. And it's not just like, hey, look at my catch. It actually describes what was happening, what conditions they were faced with, and then what lures they were using and what tactics they were using. And so there's just a wealth of knowledge. I learn from it every single day, because with so many people just being helpful, it's literally, no matter how, we've had a lot of people fishing for 50 plus years that are just like, wow, I didn't know that. And so it's impossible not to learn something. Yep. As long as you just have to take a little bit of time to read through it all. Or
come join us, saltstrong.com. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, I'm learning from the members every day as well. You know, if I go 2 or 3 weeks where I can't go out on the water, I have no idea what's going on. I can go and check the reports and get a better understanding of what I should be doing next time I go on the water. So even we learn from our members. So not everybody knows everything.
Nope. Never ending puzzle. So guys, come join us there at saltstrong.com. You'll see at the top a little button to say join the Insider Club. We would love to have you. Comes with an unheard of 365-day guarantee. We'll even double your money if you feel like you were in there for a year and it was a waste of your time. That's how confident we are it will work for you. All about on the water fishing tips and stuff you cannot find out there on YouTube, the stuff you won't see on the fishing shows, you won't see it in the magazines. And then we throw in the discounts, and more importantly, show you how to use all that tackle to maximize your investment to catch more fish. And then, as Austin, you called it a family. That's really what it's become, is this family of anglers in this community. It's been really special, and now met a lot of great friends. And as soon as this whole COVID thing gets a little bit better, we're going to start doing our live events again, which I absolutely love. It's nothing better than going out there and shaking hands and high-fiving and doing a little fishing and cooking out and all the other fun stuff that we've done. Maybe we'll get old Brett Cox, Bubba Love out there singing, and we did a couple of camping events for a full weekend. That always got a little bit crazy. I missed that stuff though. So I'm pumped for next year, 2021, right? 2021 sounds
crazy, doesn't it? We're
crazy.
There.
2020 part 2.
All right, guys, appreciate you. We appreciate everyone who participated on Facebook. A lot of people there tuning in, and I will have to go back through some of these questions we got. I know there's a bunch of them. And otherwise, if you're an Insider member, ask it in there, and we're always getting on those. Austin jumps on it. Is that what you're doing as soon as we got this call, right? You're jumping
Yep.
in there. I knew it.
Absolutely.
I knew it. Trying to beat me to the punch. All right, guys. Peace. We out. Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Get easy.